Warning: this documentary discusses alleged and proven financial crimes based on publicly available records, court documents, and investigative reporting. Nothing in this program constitutes financial, legal, or investment advice. All individuals are presumed innocent unless proven guilty in a court of law. This content is presented for educational purposes only. Viewer discretion is advised.
In today's regulatory environment, it's virtually impossible to violate rules.
Bernard Madoff did not rise from the shadows. He rose from the center. He founded Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities, known as BLMIS, and operated it from New York City, the financial capital of the world. The firm was registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission as a broker-dealer and later registered as an investment advisor. On paper, BLMIS was legitimate. It engaged in 3 primary lines of business: market making, proprietary trading. Investment advisory services, this mattered, because the fraud did not replace a real firm. It hid inside one. According to the federal charging documents, BLMIS maintained a principal place of business in Manhattan and operated openly as a regulated entity under the supervision of the SEC. Madoff himself was not an outsider. He sat on industry boards. He advised peers. He helped shape market infrastructure. At one point, he served as chairman of NASDAQ, one of the most influential electronic exchanges in the world. That position did something critical. It turned Bernard Madoff from a money manager into an authority. And authority in finance is the most powerful disguise there is. Madoff did not sell brilliance. He sold calm. While other hedge funds chased volatility, Madoff offered something different: consistency. Not extraordinary returns, not eye-catching profits, just steady gains, month after month, year after year. When markets rose, his clients earned money. When markets fell, they still earned money. When volatility spiked, their statements barely moved. According to the court record, these results were fictional. There were no trades executed on behalf of advisory clients, no securities purchased, no option strategies deployed. The returns did not come from the market. They came from other investors. But the illusion worked because it didn't look like a scam. It looked boring. And boring in finance feels safe.
Most practitioners in the marketplace want to comply with the rules. They're not trying to disadvantage anybody. I think, I would like to start with the premise that most of the practitioners in our industry come into their firms in the morning saying they want to comply with the rules, they want to do what's best for their client.
BLMS was not a shell company. That is one of the most important and most misunderstood elements of the Madoff case. Most of the firm's employees worked legitimate operations: market making for institutional clients, proprietary trading activities, brokerage services. Those parts of the firm were real. They generated revenue. They executed trades. They complied with regulations. But according to federal filings, the investment advisory business, the part promising steady returns, was segregated from the rest of the firm. Physically separated, operationally isolated, access restricted. Only a small circle of trusted individuals handled advisory accounts. This separation was not accidental. It allowed the fraud to exist without contaminating the rest of the firm. Employees could honestly say they worked for a legitimate business because they did. And that legitimacy became the fraud's greatest shield. Bernard Madoff was not a passive executive. According to the court documents, he was the founder, sole member, and principal of BLMIS. He controlled the firm's business activities and decision-making processes directly. There was no independent oversight. no internal checks that mattered. Madoff approved. How investor funds were handled, how account statements were generated, how records were maintained. He controlled the narrative from start to finish. That level of control is rare in modern finance. And it is dangerous because it removes friction. And friction is often the only thing that exposes fraud early. The lie lived on paper. According to the charging documents, Madoff caused tens of thousands of false account statements to be generated and sent to clients over the course of the scheme. These statements showed trades that never occurred, securities that were never purchased, gains that never existed. They were mailed through the United States Postal Service and transmitted electronically, creating federal jurisdiction. The details mattered. Trades were backdated to make strategies appear plausible. Losses were smoothed. Returns were capped to avoid suspicion. This was not sloppy fraud. It was editorial. The most unsettling part of the Madoff case is not the deception. It's the silence. Independent analysts raised concerns. Some questioned how returns remained so stable. Others noted that strategies described by Madoff did not align with market realities. But Madoff's reputation acted as insulation. He didn't need to explain himself. He had already been approved by regulators, by banks, by peers. According to the court filings, Madoff exploited systemic weaknesses: reliance on self-reporting, fragmented oversight, deference to reputation. Banks assumed regulators were watching. Regulators assumed banks had verified. Investors assumed both had done their jobs. No one wanted to be the first to accuse the most respected man in the room. As the scheme grew, it became harder to question. More investors meant more validation. More validation meant more trust. According to federal filings, Madoff accepted billions of dollars over the life of the scheme from individuals, trusts, charities, pension funds, and hedge funds. Some investors withdrew profits for years, profits funded entirely by others. This created testimonials without anyone realizing they were participating in the deception. The scheme protected itself by growing.
Down 1.7% here, a loss of 37 points or so. Apple shares are just getting hammered this morning.
We're down by between 3 and 4.5% generally across these markets. Let's talk about the speed with which we are watching this market deteriorate. We're red everywhere, essentially, down by 4-5%.
We're down over 16%. Dow at the same time has fallen about 18%.
The stock market is now down 21%.
The global financial crisis of 2008 did not expose the fraud. It strained it. As markets collapsed, investors demanded liquidity. Redemptions surged. According to the court record, Madoff faced billions of dollars in redemption requests that he could not satisfy because the funds had never been invested. For the first time, the flow reversed faster than new money could replace it. The system broke.
It's all one big fucking lie.
What is?
The advisory. It's a fraud. There are no investments.
What are you talking about? Of course they're investments.
I made them up.
They're on every statement.
I made them up.
I've seen the trades.
They're fake. All fake. Basically just a big Ponzi scheme.
Madoff did not confess to regulators. He confessed to family. According to the court filings, Madoff admitted to close family members that the investment advisory business was one big lie. The illusion collapsed privately before it collapsed publicly. His sons reported him to federal authorities. Within hours, the most successful fraud in financial history was over. Federal agents arrested Madoff the next morning. There was no attempt to flee, no resistance, no denial. The case did not require a lengthy investigation to establish probable cause. The evidence was already there. Account records, false statements, internal ledgers, and admissions. According to the charging documents, Madoff's conduct constituted a pattern of intentional deception involving interstate wires and mailings over many years. The scope was immediately apparent. This was not a single fraudulent transaction. It was an enterprise. Prosecutors charged Madoff with multiple felonies, including securities fraud, wire fraud, mail fraud, money laundering, perjury, making false filings with the SEC. Each charge addressed a different aspect of the same core deception. According to the court filings, Madoff knowingly misrepresented investment activity, failed to invest client funds as promised, and converted investor money for his own use and the use of others. The case did not rely on inference. It relied on documentation. The judge imposed the maximum sentence permitted by law: 150 years in federal prison. The sentence was symbolic. Madoff would never leave prison alive. The court cited the unprecedented scope of the fraud, the duration of the deception, the deliberate and calculated nature of the conduct, the devastation inflicted on thousands of victims. This was not negligence. It was sustained intent. Madoff did not invent fraud. He perfected trust. He understood that in modern finance, authority replaces scrutiny, stability replaces transparency, reputation replaces proof. Investors were not irrational. They were human. They trusted what looked safe.
To a scheme ripping off thousands of investors of more than $60 billion, has died in federal prison.
He had been sick for some time with end-stage renal disease and other chronic medical conditions.
Madoff died in federal custody. The scheme ended. The damage did not. Families rebuilt or didn't. Institutions adapted or vanished. The court record closes with a sentence, not a solution. Bernard Madoff did not steal money alone. He stole certainty. The certainty that diligence is enough. The certainty that authority equals safety. The certainty that someone else has already checked. The legacy of Madoff is not measured only in dollars. It is measured in trust and how easily it can be weaponized.